Welcome to Colts Law. I'm Lawrence Owen, and with me today I have a very special guest. As everybody knows, the Philadelphia Eagles have traded quarterback Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts. And you know what? We've already talked about it as a Colts group, fans and media and stuff. I thought, man, I need to get someone in here with a different viewpoint. And what better viewpoint than to get someone who covers the Philadelphia Eagles? I've got Tyler Steege from Eagles Brawl. I hope I pronounced that right. Tyler, why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know where they can find you?
Yes, you did. You pronounced it correct. I know it's hard on the eyes and it's hard to pronounce, but yeah, it's Tyler Steege. I appreciate it. I'm over at Eagles Brawl. I'm over there with Connor and Ed and Giovanni. And then as far as anything else, I have a Twitter account. It's Steege NFL. I talk about Eagles, but I'm a draft nerd. I'm an NFL nerd. I follow the Colts closely. I follow the Raiders. Pretty much all 32 teams. So, I'm excited to get talking. I'm a little sad about this Carson Wentz information and news, but, I'm excited to give what I know about the guy, and you guys should be excited about what player you just got.
All right. Well, if you happen to miss what he said, you'll be able to find those contacts in the description on the video if you're watching this on YouTube later on. Now, Tyler, biggest question as a general Eagles fan, general Eagles. I get that there's. When you're talking about a fan base, there are extremes in one way or the other, right? I'm sure there's Eagles fans out there says, good riddance, let the son of a, whatever go. Don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out. And there's other fans right now like, there's a child, that's been out there on Twitter, as you probably have seen, that's just balling out because Wentz went to the Indianapolis Colts. Where is the general consensus of Eagles fans sitting right now?
That's a very good question. It's super vague, and it's funny that you asked that because the funniest part about Eagles Twitter is there's never a consensus. There's never the fan base typically is always on the same page. I would say majority of Eagles fans are pretty let down about the news. I mean, anytime you sign a quarterback to the amount of money that Carson Wentz got, the $128 million contract, and then just 2 years later, he's being discussed in a trade, and then it finally happens, obviously something went wrong, and, you never anticipate that. And so if you would have asked me 3 years ago, is Carson Wentz going to play closer to 5 years with the Eagles, or is he going to play closer to 15? I would have answered without a doubt 15. And so this is all just, I guess, a shock, even though it was inevitable. The Carson Wentz silence over the last few months or couple months, we all kind of were speculating a trade. But even me expecting it and anticipating it, I see the Adam Schefter tweet yesterday, and I still just got that form of shock. And then after the shock, you start to reminisce on all the special plays that he had and the throws that he had. And, before Carson Wentz got here, and anybody can, say he wasn't part of the Super Bowl run, but he absolutely was. He led the team to a number one spot in the playoffs, got him a bye week. And obviously we know about the ACL, but what Carson Wentz has done for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's the most talented quarterback that's ever suited up for the team. And he's going to be that same player for the Colts. Now, whether Frank Reich and the coaching staff can figure out how to get him closer to that 2017 form is going to be a big question. But I have no doubt that – here's the thing. The context with Carson Wentz is a lot of people jump to 2017, but they ignore the years 2018 and 2019. But the average fan didn't watch Carson Wentz, but he was still very, very good in those years. And the biggest issue in the last few years has been the play calling and the surrounding and the injuries. So to answer, sorry, I know I just splurged a little bit with a bunch of words, but the general consensus is a little bit of sadness Definitely some shock. There's a little bit of excitement with Jalen Hurts. But overall, it's just crappy. It's crappy to move on from a guy who's as talented as Carson Wentz this early in his career.
All right, so you threw me for a little bit of a loop. Okay, so I've been following the NFL for, oh my goodness, near 40 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. I am an older gentleman. I'm in my mid 40s. Okay.
You don't look it, man.
Well, I appreciate that. So my first ever big time love of a football player was Randall Cunningham. And when you said that Carson Wentz is the most talented quarterback you've ever had, I immediately go back to Randall Cunningham. And then, of course, I mean, obviously you had Donovan McNabb, you had Michael Vick for a stretch, you know. So for you to say Carson Wentz over those type of quarterbacks, that's a big deal.
And anybody who's going to push back and say Randall, I will not fight you on it, because Randall Cunningham he's immediately who pops in my head as the second most talented, or most talented. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to nitpick or, say somebody's wrong if they said Randall, but the point still stands. The talent that Carson Wentz has it's ridiculous, man. I mean, the guy can make every single throw that you want in a quarterback. He can make a 70-yard bomb throw. The way he can extend the play, his pocket presence. Now, there is going to be some things that you guys notice as fans. His short accuracy definitely needs improvement. But just from a talent perspective and what he can bring to the table, you'll notice, I mean, there's going to be plays where you're just like, there's not many human beings on this earth that can make that play or that throw. And he has 1 to 2 of those flashes every single game. And the biggest thing with Carson is getting him to stay on schedule, and getting him to keep the offense in a rhythm and stay on schedule and not miss the gimmies, because he can miss some gimmies. He's not a perfect prospect. There's a reason he's being shipped out. But he is an ultra talented player. But yes, I don't want to throw shade on Randall. I respect the greats, in Randall Cunningham. I am a little bit younger. I'm 28. And I didn't get the luxury of actually watching Randall Cunningham. But yeah, I mean, just everything that Carson could do from an intangible standpoint and also from a physical standpoint is, to me, second to none.
Awesome. Now, one thing that does stand out on the film to me is he has what I want to call Andrew Luck. Something that him and Andrew Luck have a lot in common is they tend to try, well, obviously not Luck anymore, but they both try to extend a play to a fault sometimes. I've noticed that he doesn't really like to throw the football away. He feels that every time he picks up the football, he can make something happen with his legs. Do you think that that's something that he needs to work on, or do you think that that's just what you get with Carson Wentz?
Yes, 100%. And that's funny because Andrew Luck coming out to me of Stanford was one of the most, if not the most, I got into draft probably in like the year 2010, at least being somewhat educated. And Andrew Luck was one of my favorite prospects ever. I love Andrew Luck. I love everything about him. Pocket presence, arm strength. He's very similar to what Carson Wentz is. And by the way, let me just say this, you Colts fans are so dang spoiled, okay? Because you went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, and now you're getting a potential another franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz, who's 28. So if this does pan out, there's going to be a little bit of envy in me and also some bitterness. But yeah, they do. They have very similar styles. It could be a stubborn style almost. It's not a bad trait though. It's what's in Russell Wilson. It's what's in Pat Mahomes. It's what's in Deshaun Watson. Yes, there are some times where it could be frustrating when you're in field goal range and it's a 2nd and 10 and all of a sudden they take an unnecessary sack and you're like, why did you bring it out of field goal range? And those can make you pull your hair out. But then on the very next drive, it could be 3rd and 19 and he extends the play and sends a 50-yard bomb touchdown. So there is some give and take. Carson can have a tendency to get a little chaotic. But I also think that Frank Reich and you guys should not underplay that because there is this narrative that Frank Reich knows what to do with Carson, and I am entirely on that narrative. Doug Peterson has struggled the last 3 years of getting Carson to get in a scheme that is comfortable with Carson. And I think that as an NFL fan, I mean, the NFL is a better product when Carson Wentz is playing well. And I think that Frank Reich is absolutely going to get him there.
Awesome. Another narrative that is hanging over Carson Wentz that has a lot of Colts fans a little bit worried about is, well, let's just say Carson seems to be a little bit injury prone, but is that really with him, or does that have him and his play style? Does that have to do with the play calling? Does it have to do with the offensive line, or is it a little bit of mix of everything?
I don't like the injury prone label. I think that's a little extreme. Yes, he extends plays, but I mean, let's face the fact, this guy is 6'5", he's 235 pounds. He's an absolute tank. He's got a very similar style to, or at least build to Cam Newton. Yes, he obviously dealt with the ACL. But after that, the back injury was, so in 2008, for anybody who doesn't know or didn't follow as closely as my nerd self. So Carson tears his ACL in 2017. 2018, he obviously comes back, and the team is struggling. We're like, I think we're 4-8 or 4-9. So we decide to just shut him down. We blamed it on a back. I don't know how severe that back injury was. I don't know medical records or whatnot. But because they shut him down, there was when the injury label was kind of around Carson Wentz. But I mean, he did play all of 2019 until the playoff game where he took if you ask Eagle fans, it's a sensitive topic, but Jadeveon Clowney, crazy shot to his head, and it just should have never happened. And then 2020, I mean, yes, he got benched, but he's had 2 consecutive seasons of playing and taking some nasty shots with a really bad offensive line. So injury prone, no, I'm not on that narrative. Do I think he's had some injuries in his past? I mean, we can't ignore facts. Yes. But I don't think Carson Wentz he's not made of glass. He's not a Michael Vick. He's not a Sam Bradford. It's not as severe as that. And again, I just like gray areas. I don't think it needs to be to the extreme that he's injury prone, but I also, you can't ignore the history of him. But your guys' offensive line should protect him. And what I think Frank Reich will do is you're going to see, and I mean, we saw it with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was known of getting the ball out really, really quick, really, really fast, and knowing where to go with the ball. I think that's what Carson Wentz needs. And we saw the last few seasons, Doug Peterson almost relied. You talked about, was it a blessing or a curse for Carson to extend plays? It almost got to a point where Doug would drop a play and then he would say, if it doesn't work, Carson, we need you to save us. And that's kind of what it seemed like. And there was a lot of just broken plays and it's not been a great product in Philadelphia for the last couple of years. And there's a reason Doug Peterson does not have a job right now.
Well, it's kind of weird. I want to talk about this. The whole reason that I understood that Doug Peterson was no longer the head coach was because of Wentz, right?
Yeah, nah. Let's defeat that narrative. Yeah, so Doug Peterson's struggles have surfaced since 2018. And anybody who follows me on Twitter will know this. I mean, I've been very harsh on Doug because he had an amazing staff in 2017. And anytime a team thrives and makes it to the Super Bowl or wins, you're going to lose good coordinators, which the Colts got probably the best one from the Eagles. They got Frank Reich, and he's an awesome leader of men. He's an awesome play caller. I mean, Frank Reich is not arguably, he's a better coach than Doug Peterson at this point. And it's Doug Peterson struggles. You could have made a case if the Eagles didn't make the playoffs in 2019 because of a bad division. You could have made a legitimate case for Doug to be fired then. So 2020 wasn't necessarily a surprise to me or other people who have been paying close attention. It's been a really, really bad product. He has a hard time sticking to the run, and his route concepts are very, very bland. And then the context of the coordinators. I mean, last year he didn't even hire an offensive coordinator. He just said, I'm going to do it myself. And we all saw how 2020 went. It was a disaster. So no, Carson Wentz did not get Doug Peterson fired. Doug Peterson got himself fired. And I think that narrative is one of the most misleading narratives out there.
Okay. All right. Because it was kind of odd, because I'm like, okay, so Peterson got fired because they wanted to keep Wentz, and now Wentz is traded, which is really weird because it's there are so many connections here, because you had Frank Reich with Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz. You guys go to the Super Bowl. Then Frank Reich becomes the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and then gets Nick Sirianni as the offensive coordinator.
Right.
Doug Peterson then gets fired. Nick Sirianni becomes head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and then as the head coach, Carson Wentz then gets traded to the Indianapolis Colts back with Frank Reich. It is a weird circle of events that makes me wonder if fate is a real freaking thing. All right.
It does. It makes sense. And I'll say this is a super random fact, or not a fact, but an opinion. I think that you guys should be extremely, extremely excited about what Michael Pittman can be with Carson Wentz. He is like, so going back to last year, Michael Pittman was a target for me. I thought that he was a realistic target for the Eagles because of Carson Wentz's play style. I think Michael Pittman, if, of course, Carson Wentz gets back on track of playing pretty good football like I expect him to, I think he and Michael Pittman are going to be a very, very fun connection to see for the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, Philadelphia is also known for having really quick receivers throughout their career. I mean, in Philadelphia, the Colts have a very quick receiver. And I'm not talking about T.Y. Hilton. I'm talking about Paris Campbell. Now, he has an injury problem. He's been hurt a couple times over the last couple seasons, but when he's on the field, he's incredibly dangerous, especially on little short crossing routes and
love Paris
drags and stuff of that nature. You talk about wanting Wentz to be a quick release type quarterback with Frank Reich. If Paris can stay healthy, I think that connection would be very, very dangerous as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Paris Campbell was a guy that I liked, and I missed McLaurin because I fell in love with Campbell so much. I missed McLaurin. But yes, Campbell, I'm a big fan as well. I loved his tape at Ohio State, and yes, the injuries have kind of held him back for you guys, but yes, that's another guy. Yeah. I'm more so, again, so the narrative, so like if you ask, and it's funny that you brought that up because like the whole, Carson got Doug fired. And so then it kind of goes off the narrative. Like a lot of people think that Carson has struggled because of, you always hear O-line and you always hear, receivers. But to me, the biggest thing that has held Carson Wentz back for the last 2 years has been play calling rather than personnel. And that falls directly on Doug and what I think he'll get with Frank. Like, so Carson is very much a rhythm quarterback. If he starts the game 0 for 4, sometimes it can be really hard for him to get out of that slump. He's very much a guy that you want to get some quick hits to. And once he gets in that rhythm and you see him start bouncing in the pocket and he's just excited and he's in that rhythm, and you'll notice it when you guys start to see him this week after week. That's what Doug struggled with. There were no screen calls. There were no gimmies on just a crosser. There were no just little curls. It was always just like, it was just a frustrating product. And that was probably the most frustrating thing is like, I kept saying, you're wasting the prime of a franchise quarterback. Like we're wasting the good years of it. And then it led to this, to where he's not even on the team anymore. So yeah. It's freaking frustrating. I am excited for you guys. I really am. I really do think, I know that there's probably half of your fan base that's kind of skeptical. That's probably like, I have no idea what to expect. I only saw Carson in 2020 because obviously you're probably not paying attention to the Eagles. But I sent out this tweet. I think that it is much, much more likely that Carson gets closer to 2017 and 2019 rather than 2020. And that's not even a slouch to 2018 either. I mean, people really underestimated how well he played in 2018 and 2019. Like, again, I'm rambling here, but 2019, I said after that past year, last year, that year was probably more impressive from a quarterback standpoint of he masked so many issues on our offense. And yet we still, I know 9 games isn't that much, but he masked so much. And to me, that was a more impressive year than 2017. Just for what he was capable of doing, the game-winning drives, the makeup of the bad offensive line. He was so impressive. So I would be very surprised if Frank Reich doesn't get him to at least top 12 or 10 QB play.
Well, I mean, one big thing that a lot of people need to realize is it's not just the injuries that the injuries, the effect of those injuries that they've had over the last few years. It's not just because the talent level has dropped. You got to understand that when you have receivers, quarterback, you need a cohesion there. You know, you need something that is a constant to help understand the quarterback receiver combo, you know, where you're throwing the same guy over and over and over. It's just like the offensive line. If you're constantly changing who's beside what guy on the offensive line, that cohesiveness is then broken, and it even makes it even worse. Not just the talent level drops, but the cohesion drops, and they don't understand what this guy's doing next to them, as opposed to what someone who's had, 40, 50 snaps with the guy next to him works. So those injuries are multiple fold in affecting how a quarterback ends up playing.
1,000%, 100%. And I again, I don't want to make this an Eagles show, but yeah, I mean, I think they had like 15 different offensive line combinations last year. So it was just a mess, and it's been a mess. But I tweeted in like November of last year, and I said, if Carson Wentz were to ask for a trade in this offseason, I would not be upset at him. And that goes from a media standpoint, because Indianapolis is a smaller market compared to Philadelphia. Carson Wentz isn't going to be criticized for eating Chick-fil-A instead of Popeyes or whatever. I don't know. There's just ridiculous criticisms in Philadelphia. I appreciate the big market and what it brings, but I think Indianapolis is just a much better fit. And he needs that consistency with the offensive line, with knowing somebody like Frank. And then hopefully he just gets a consistent surrounding. I mean, maybe Michael Pittman, maybe it be Paris Campbell, who knows? But yes, he just needs some form of consistency, because in the 5 years he was in Philadelphia, he just did not get that.
All right, moving on a little bit. The Eagles traded a king's ransom to move up to go get Carson Wentz. If everybody remembers, they moved up to the second pick, traded away a first round, second round, third round, fourth round pick, if I remember correctly, to get to that second spot, right?
It wasn't a king's ransom per se. It was, I believe they exchanged first, but they gave up a first. It really wasn't. I mean, here's the thing, because I know what we're getting at. The Eagles got a Super Bowl out of it, and that to me it was worth it. No matter how the compensation got now, because this trade was inevitable, and I said that at the start of the show. So you can't employ somebody who doesn't want to be there, and Carson Wentz didn't want to be here. And so, am I happy with a second and a third round pick? Hell no. To me, like in my head, I'm like, if Carson Wentz is traded to the Colts, they immediately become a top 3 or 4 team in the AFC. You got the Chiefs, the Bills, and then maybe the Browns. Who knows what the Browns will be next year? Maybe the Ravens, but I feel comfortable with calling the Colts the 3rd or 4th best team in the AFC. So they're immediately contenders. So where I'm at as an Eagles fan, I'm like, you just made another team a contender by giving them a quarterback, because your only other quarterback is Jacob Eason. So, I mean, you don't really have a plan B yet. So this whole thing with like Ballard having this leverage really bothered me, because I'm like, no, the Eagles have leverage because they have the potential franchise quarterback. So in my head, I'm like, if you don't get a first round pick for this guy, it is a crap trade. And so when I first saw the details, I was like, this is awful. This is terrible. Ballard did school Howie Roseman And I don't say that often. I am not a typical Eagles fan who is calling for Howie's head. I think Howie Roseman is a very competent GM, especially in trade scenarios. And he rarely loses trades, but I think he absolutely lost this.
Well, I mean, if Wentz balls out and plays the entire season and
then you get a first, right?
Then you get a first round pick. The Colts get what they want, and obviously, if they make the playoffs and he stays healthy and plays well, then they got the quarterback they wanted. And in the same aspect, then the Eagles will have also gotten their first round pick. But if he doesn't play well, gets hurt, something of that nature, then obviously it's dropped down to a second.
I don't know what would be better value for the Eagles. Obviously, you want the first round pick, right? Mm-hmm. But if you get that first round pick, then that means Carson is playing well, and now you're like, what if? What did I just give up? And that's you're playing with fire here. I tweeted it yesterday. Anytime you trade away a 28-year-old quarterback who you just paid $130 million to just a year ago, you're kind of the laughing stock of the NFL.
Well, another thing is you're talking about the Eagles had the leverage here. It was reported that the Bears never actually sent an actual offer, that the Colts were the only team to do that. So
that's Howie Roseman. Yeah.
That's kind of, it sounds like to me. And it was also reported that Ballard never changed anything that hit this offer. It was there and it was
and
done.
I don't know how close you were paying attention to it, but when Ballard had that press conference and he said, that's what really caught my eye. And I said, oh, Carson's going to Indy for sure. When Ballard said, there's definitely not a trade going down today, I was like, whoa. Like that was him sending his own media out. And that was him saying, Howie, I'm not budging on this. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean. Like Ballard played this and I respect Ballard as a GM. He's one of my favorite GMs in the NFL. Like it's just very rare being an Eagles fan and seeing Howie Roseman get schooled, because he's typically the one he traded Sam Bradford for a first and fourth round pick. Like the guy knows how to work the phones. It's very rare to see another GM school him. And I think Chris Ballard absolutely took him to school during all this.
So there's a massive financial impact of this trade. Not just the fact that, the Eagles did get out from underneath the extended 4-year contract, but they ate like $33 million in bonuses this year, which is going to hurt them, in cap room this year. How is that going to affect rebuilding the Eagles because of this trade? And to me, it shows a little bit of to eat $30-some million in a cap hit shows a little bit of, to trade somebody away. Obviously, Carson wasn't wanting to play there, but at the same time, I mean, that's almost a desperation move, isn't it?
100%. And that's where it gets very, very sticky is what do you do? Because let's say they do what Houston is doing with Deshaun, like with Deshaun Watson, it sounds like they're just saying, hey, you're going to play for us no matter what. Mm-hmm. And we've seen some players will say, okay, fine, I'll just sit out. I'm not going to training camp. I'm not going to play. So you're making that risk. I don't think Carson would have ever got there. But again, anybody who's paid close attention to this got really, really, really nasty. And we're still trying to figure out answers with what happened with Carson and the front office. I don't know. I've been told some things, but I don't know what to take with a grain of salt or what to take as truth. But it sounds like after the season, Carson basically said, it doesn't matter if Frank Reich was actually hired in Philadelphia. I want out of here. And so that is letting you know that there is an issue either with the owner or the GM or both. And so, again, if a guy doesn't want to be here, you got to do something. And so, yeah, it's the biggest cap hit in NFL history who won't be on your team. But if the Eagles are hitting a rebuild, and here's the beautiful thing. Well, it's not beautiful, hardly not beautiful. That's a terrible word. The hindsight being 2020 is Jalen Hurts was drafted, and you don't have to add another quarterback to your books. So, yes, you're paying Carson, but you already have, in theory, the quarterback that is going to be starting for you. So it's not as if, I guess you're not like, I guess what I'm getting at is they don't have to go out and pay an average, I don't know, Teddy Bridgewater, $20 million a year. It's not as if they're going to be double paying a quarterback. So yes, the cap hit sucks short term for sure. It's accelerated, but the nice thing is I need to look at the details, but I'm pretty sure the cap hit is done after next year. So they can kind of start this rebuild, which also, by the way, looking at the value of the trade, I would rather have a first round pick in 2022 than 2021, even though I'm very impatient. I'm an impatient person, but I would rather have it in 2022 in theory, because with all this COVID stuff, we're actually going to get a combine next year. It should be a more thorough draft process. So I'm not mad at that. And hopefully it is a first round pick and not a second. But from a financial perspective, it was just something that you had to do. There was no other way around it. Again, it was an unfortunate inevitable, and it was going to happen. So,
well, I mean, again, if it does end up being a first round pick, that means that the Colts, did well. They made the playoffs. There's a possibility they get to the Super Bowl. You could end up being a really late first round pick. You know what I mean? Like 30, 31, 32.
Right.
So, but I mean, it's still better than a second round pick. So,
exactly.
I mean,
and here's the thing. I think a lot of people are saying that one team needs to win this. There is a very good chance, because I don't think Carson Wentz's relationship in Philadelphia was salvageable. And when I say in Philadelphia, I mean with the owners, I mean with the media, and I even mean in the locker room. Because, and when I say locker room, I don't mean that Carson Wentz is toxic. There's this also small narrative that Carson Wentz is this hard to deal with guy. I've seen guys like Fletcher Cox. I've seen guys like Brandon Graham. I've seen guys like Jason Kelsey. Those are two of those are future Hall of Famers. Like, they've came out, defended him. And I mean, offense, defense, anybody, ex-players. Carson Wentz has a lot of support in the locker room. But there were a lot of younger guys, like, for instance, Jalen Reagor, who come in and they don't know where to go. They're like, do I go with Jalen Hurts? Do I go with Carson Wentz? There was just, again, stability, which Carson will get in Indianapolis. There was none of that here. And so that's why when I say I sent out that tweet in November about, like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Carson asked for a trade. He just needs some stability there, where the guy has just dealt with a freaking lot. And I'm as sad as I am as an Eagles fan, I'm very happy that he landed where he did, because I think that this is probably the best scenario for him. So,
continuing on with the financial implications of the trade, I'm looking at the cap space right now for Philadelphia, and it's not pretty. I'm looking at negative $45 million. Oh my goodness. So that rolls over to the cap space. That means there could be some guys that might be let go. And I'm curious of your thoughts on that, and if and who, whether or not a player might be willing to renegotiate. Like, would Fletcher Cox be willing to renegotiate? Slay, someone like that, Graham, or do you think that certain players, as rumors have it, might be let go, like, say, Ertz?
Yeah. It's going to be a very, very unpredictable offseason. And what also is going to make it even more unpredictable is, you're hit with this negative 45 to I've seen negative 45 and I've seen negative 70. And I think that the cap hit of Carson makes it negative 70.
Okay.
But so with a new coaching staff, it's going to be hard because there's a lot of veterans and you have a new regime and there's a new scheme. So, for instance, and I don't think that Fletcher Cox would be in this conversation, but there's going to be guys like that who are older and aging, and the new staff basically needs to decide how productive can they be in my scheme, and are they worth this cap hit? So yes, there will be a lot of restructures. The nice thing about this, and yes, he's the culprit for why the Eagles are here, But Howie Roseman is a cap genius. He is an absolute cap genius, and I know that's kind of it's kind of contradicting because he put them here. But what happened, and I said this on our most recent podcast, is the Eagles thought that they were way closer than they were last year. They made it to the playoffs in 2019, and so they signed a lot of aging vets, and they pushed for 2020, and it blew up in their face. And so now, which it could be a blessing in disguise, because now it makes them reevaluate and say, hey, we need to start over. And so that's what's happening now. This full rebuild allows that. So do I expect a Darius Slay cut? No. Darius Slay will be here next year. Do I expect a Fletcher Cox cut? No. But I do think like guys like Lane Johnson, I think guys like Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, guys like that will get reworked. And it may get to a point if somebody says, hey, we want to rework you and we want you to be part of this rebuild. If they say no, then it may lead to a cut for some vets who have been here, some familiar faces. And that's kind of the unfortunate side of this cap space. But like for instance, Deshaun Jackson was cut today. Alshon's going to be cut. Malik Jackson's going to be cut. There's guys who have these large cap hits who are very easy to move. Ertz is going to be cut or traded. And that right there, those guys that I mentioned is going to be about 30 to 40 million. So it's not as a disaster as it looks on paper. And I think Howie will figure it out. They'll be able to sign some low to middle tier free agents in March.
I want to, while all the Colts fans that are watching or listening to this right now, I want to temper your expectations right away. Okay. For those of you thinking, oh my gosh, how great would it be to have Fletcher Cox sitting beside DeForest Buckner in the middle of that D line? Take it off your mind right now, because Fletcher Cox's cap hit is only 24 million. His dead cap, if he's cut or traded, is 21. They're not going to let him go over $3 or $4 million. I promise you.
No, it's not happening. And Fletcher, by the way, I think he's like 29 right now. Like he's going to get another contract. And Fletcher is just an absolute stud. Him and DeForest Buckner would be very fun to watch next to each other. That would be a blast, though.
There you go. Who would want to go up against a middle like that? I mean, that just no.
Absolutely not. No.
All right. Moving on. Let's see here. We basically I was going to talk about the reasoning for the organizational perspective for trading Wentz, but we pretty much really talked about that. You discussed you know that you're going to end up going with Hurts, but from what I'm hearing, it's been said that Hurts is not guaranteed the starter position.
Yeah, Howie Roseman will. And by the way, can you tell that I'm somewhat of a Howie Roseman fan?
That's okay. I'm a Chris Ballard fan, so it's all good.
And here's the thing. There is a good chance. Again, there's a lot of front office stuff that I don't know. And one thing that makes me very, very nervous about this Eagles is I talk very, very highly about this front office, but I'm getting a little scared with how hands-on our owner is. And anybody follows like Jerry Jones or any owner who's too hands-on, it can be a disaster. And so that is where my biggest worry is around this team. But as far as, sorry, what was your original question? I'm sorry. I just drew a blank.
The whole Hurts being
Jalen Hurts. So one thing about Howie Roseman during draft season is he never shows his cards. He will never show you where his draft plan is. And they could take a left tackle last year and he can have the entire NFL thinking he may take another left tackle in this upcoming draft. So I expect a lot of leaks. I expect them to say they're falling in love with Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But I fully anticipate Jalen Hurts being the starter this upcoming fall. The guy, again, he's not nearly as physically talented as a guy like Carson Wentz. But the intangibles that man brings, the leadership, the willingness to just want to be better, and not, again, this is no comparing to Carson Wentz. I'm just talking about Jalen Hurts here. There's a lot to be excited about. And in those 4 games, I don't want to say I had a second round grade on Jalen Hurts. I didn't coming out, but after watching those 4 games, I can definitely see why the team selected him where they did. And I think it would just be a disservice to take somebody at 53 overall and then just say, nah, you get no real shot. Especially just of where Jalen Hurts has kind of came from. His college career, he hasn't played the position very long. And he's gotten better as a passer every single year. So I don't expect a QB at 6. I do expect the media to run with that. And I expect Howie to release a lot of leaks that says Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or maybe they'll even think about trading up to 1 for Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'm sure there's going to be some bizarre leaks. But I am praying with all of my heart and all of my energy that Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts is going to be in midnight green. That is my dream. Jamar Chase is my guy.
All right. Well, I mean, just to throw it out there, I am praying that Jalen Phillips drops to the Colts.
There you go. There you go. We all have our wishes. And
yeah,
by the way, because I want Jamar Chase so bad, that means it's not happening. That's just how the way this. Yep, it's just how it works.
Last year, before the Buckner trade, I was wanting a specific defensive tackle, right? One specific defensive tackle. Then the Colts trade their pick, the 13th pick, to the Niners. The Niners used that pick to get the defensive tackle. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I am way happier with the fourth.
Are you talking about Kinlaw?
Yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, I mean, it never happens. It never, ever happens. But, I mean, if it does, great. I mean, back in, 18, I was all about Quentin Nelson. And I was ecstatic that he fell to 6 and the Colts still got him and got the trade with Darnold and all that other crap that happened. Oh, the Jets got fleeced on that one. My goodness. Moved back 3 spots in the draft and got 3 second-round picks in compensation. Holy crap. That right. And now they're talking about trading Darnold out, right?
Yeah, right.
One last question. And then I will let you go. I really appreciate you spending all this extra time here. By the way, Colts fans, he said when I talk to him, he might have 10, 15 minutes to spare with me. Guess what? We kind of went over that, but, it's all good because he told me we had a little bit of extra time on this one. So huge worry about Indianapolis Colts fans. The biggest worry. And this is something that's been brought up by Shannon Sharp, Max Kellerman. Now, don't get me wrong. I take.
We don't say Max's name on here.
Yeah, take whatever he says off with a grain of salt.
He said Brady was bad.
But Colin Cowherd, all these guys, they talk about not the physical problems that Carson Wentz has acquired over the last couple years, but what's right up here between the ears because of the situation that he's been dealing with being benched, his dealings with Peterson and all that stuff. Do you think that is a legit worry for Colts fans to worry about? Is his mental stability coming in as the starter for the Indianapolis Colts?
I think that there's levels to this. I think Carson Wentz is mentally tough. I mean, so Carson Wentz came from North Dakota State, and anybody who watched him coming out, the guy was an absolute baller at North Dakota State. Like, ice in his veins, led him to championships, and he was playing with like D2 guys. But like what he did, it was fun. It was a very fun tape to watch. And so Carson Wentz came to Philadelphia kind of like being the man, like the man on campus, kind of like the big guy. And I do think he kind of had to get humbled a little bit. I think that you realize the NFL is filled with alphas. Like, there's an alpha, like all of these guys have been told they're the man their entire life. Do I think it's an issue for Carson Wentz? No. I think that I don't think that people should underestimate what Philadelphia media can do to athletes. Anybody who paid close attention to Nelson Aguilar, as soon as he left, he just had a career year with the Las Vegas Raiders. And that was a guy who I absolutely loved here, despite what the fan narrative was on him.
I did too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nelson. And I actually think that a potential fit for him this offseason could be Indianapolis with your guys' cap space, by the way. But the overall just mental around Carson, I think he's a tough dude. And I think he's like the one thing, despite all the criticism, I never heard criticism about his work ethic, and I never heard criticism from like other teammates. Like, again, when you see vets like a guy like Fletcher Cox or Jason Kelsey coming forward and saying, this is our guy, I'll go to war with this guy, that speaks volumes, man, because, forget if a practice squad player has some feelings about you, but like if these veterans feel this way about you, I think it just speaks volumes. And like I said, I think what Carson needs is some consistency. And I think Indianapolis and their structure is a lot more solidified than Philadelphia right now. And ever since Carson Wentz was drafted, there's always been questions. He came from a D2 school. And then when he won, was he a system quarterback? And then when he started, it was, is he injury prone? And then it was, can he actually lead a team? There's just always been these questions. And again, that stems from the media. He's just not going to get that. Like, as soon as he starts to play well, now there are expectations on him. Understand that. Like, he just kind of, and again, we don't know the details, whether he wedged himself out, whether the Eagles front office did, but at the end of the day, it was unsalvageable. But now the way it looks is Carson got his way, and you just went to a coach who, quote unquote, knows how to get you back to MVP level. If Carson Wentz comes out and craps the bed, it is going to be very, very, very hard to bounce back. And again, I don't think that it'll get there, but that is a possible reality that we can't ignore. I heard Mike Greenberg say on ESPN, he said, what athlete has the most pressure on him going into 2021?
I was getting ready to ask him that question. Yeah.
Yeah. And his case was Carson Wentz. It's hard to disagree with him. It really is. It's hard to disagree with him because, yeah, it's a small market. But it was so scrutinized leading up to the trade. And again, this did get anybody who hasn't been paying close attention to the Philadelphia side. This got really, really, really ugly. It was not a, it's time to move on. You do you, I'll do me, and we'll do what's best for each other. This got like leaks were happening about Doug and Wentz not talking, about Wentz and Howie not talking. And again, this is something that's frustrating as a fan because I want answers. I want to know what caused, because when you hear Carson in pressers, he just seems like a nonchalant, just down to earth guy. And so for somebody like that, who just got paid the amount of money that he did, to be so upset, something happened here. And that's the biggest worry here as an Eagles fan. And like I said, I'm excited to watch number 11. By the way, Michael Pittman better give up that number because I'm excited to watch Carson Wentz ball. No matter what number he is, I'll be watching closely, though.
Well, Michael Pittman in preseason or training camp was running 86, so he might roll back to that number. Generally, your vets walk in, and when they're traded in, they generally will give a little bit of money to get their number, and that's generally what happens.
I would say Carson's not hurting in the money department right now.
No, so. not at all, not at all. Now, I'm going to push back a little bit. I think that me personally, I think Matt Stafford has a lot more on his table when it comes to pressure to succeed.
Well, that's interesting. You know what? That's a very good answer. I like that.
Come on. Look how much they traded him. The narrative around Stafford is he hasn't succeeded because of the organization the entire time he's been there. Now that he's with a real organization with all these weapons and a defense and everything else, they're expecting this team to be a Super Bowl contender next year. Whereas, with Indy, he was a high draft pick. The Colts potentially could end up giving a first-round pick for him. But I don't think that the pressure is nearly as high for Wentz right now as it is for Stafford.
Yeah, no, an argument or case could definitely be made, and that's a very good point because, and you know what, it's funny that you brought up Stafford. Not that it's parallel, but that's another reason why I talked about the leverage. Like if you were to ask me, or I mean anybody, like what would it take to trade for Carson Wentz after the 2019 season? There's no way in heck that you're not getting a first and a second round pick. You know what I mean? And that's what was so bizarre to me is, yes, we know that he regressed to the form that he did in 2020, but like when a guy has showcased what he did, it was just so hard to fathom. So when I saw the deal for Matthew Stafford, I was like, holy crap. Like, yeah, I love Matthew Stafford's talent. I think he's got one of the best arms in the league. And yes, Detroit is a dumpster fire as a franchise, but let's not get it twisted. Like Matthew Stafford is, yeah, I don't know. I hear you on the expectation part. I'm more so a little doubtful, but then again, I mean, McVay's scheme and what he could do in LA, you're right. Because if the Rams don't make noise and then they just gave up that compensation for him, I mean, yeah, that's a letdown. So I'm entirely on board with that.
See, another thing is, you know, the Rams gave up that kind of compensation for Stafford because they were like, they were basically giving Goff's contract to them as well, you know, so
right.
that increased. And then in a similar aspect, you know, Carson Wentz's contract, right? So, I mean, I kind of get why, not just because of his regression of 2020, but that contract also has a lot to do, I think, with the compensation coming back for it. Now, like you said, if this was 2019 Wentz, you're getting a first and second easy, you know, right. But because of the regression, I think this is why the compensation is what it is. Hey, man, I want to thank you so much for spending over almost an hour with me now here on Colts Law. Hey, guys, if you're watching this live, or, well, you're not obviously not watching it live, I'm recording it. Please don't forget to smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And there's a share button down there on YouTube. If you're listening to it on my audio podcast, thank you so much. Feel free to share it to your social media. Tyler, spend a moment one more time and go ahead and plug yourself.
T Steggy NFL is the Twitter handle. I am overly opinionated. I call out crappy media because I am not part of media, and I'm on Eagles Brawl. I record podcasts with Connor Miles and Giovanni Hamilton. We also have a Eagles insider, Ed Kratz, on there. We have a blast talking shop. We talk all NFL. We talk draft. And as do I on my Twitter account. I'm very into the draft, very into prospects. And that's that. I appreciate you bringing me on, man. I had a blast. I hope that you guys have very much success with Carson Wentz. I want to see the guy ball. He deserves it. And yeah, hopefully I interact with some more Colts fans here pretty soon. So,
yep. I think you probably will, especially once this gets out. I want to say good luck to you guys in that very interesting NFC East.
That's a good way to put it.
I won't bring up the nickname that was given by most NFL fans for that division.
That's fair.
But yeah, hopefully you guys figure it out, because right now the Eagles are not looking like a team that is on the up. But hopefully within the next 2 years, maybe they'll be able to figure some things out. And, man, to be fair, every Colts fan is wishing Nick Sirianni luck. So at least you have that from Colts fans.
Yes, I'm excited about Nick too. I'm very excited about Nick. So we'll see. I agree. I have no idea where this arrow's pointing. One day it seems like it's pointing up, and then the very next day it's a 180. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm so dramatic. Take it just day by day. No, but seriously, I appreciate you bringing me on, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure was all mine. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm Lawrence Owen for Colts Law with Tyler Steege from Eagles Brawl. And until next time, as usual, have a good one.